You're listening to Dakota Spotlight. My name is James Wolner. If you've ever been to a garage sale or an estate auction, you've probably felt that tingle of excitement while sifting through items on a table or in a box, because somewhere mixed in among the junk there just might be a gem. We like nice surprises after all. Sometimes we can spot a treasure immediately, and other times we're just not sure. Is this Beatles album just a plain old copy, or could it be the rare one worth $15,000? Other objects have no monetary value, but jump out at us for other unknown reasons, as if speaking to us, begging to be brought home. That happened to me a couple of years ago. No, not at a garage sale, but in the online archives of a library. I was scrolling through old newspapers, half distracted by the blur of endless headlines, when a little story caught my eye. It was an old one from 1965 about a murder. Reading it felt a little bit like one of those flea market finds, as if I was picking up an old brass doorknob or something and rolling it over in my hands, feeling its weight. It was interesting, but also I didn't really know what I might do with it. The headline read like this: Mankato youth arrested in shotgun slaying. I dug a little deeper, and here's what I found. On a late night in September of 1965, in rural Minnesota, a clean-cut 17-year-old high school student walked into a local Crossroads gas station on the edge of town. In his hands was a loaded shotgun. When he walked out, he had about $800 in his pocket, and the gas attendant lay dead on the floor. The Minnesota law caught up with him quickly, and 10 months later, a judge told him, "Son, you're going away for 40 years. And that was all, it appeared. Hardly a riveting story, I thought. Open and shut, no cat and mouse, no prison break, no wrongful conviction, not even a single car chase. Hardly a candidate for a long-form investigative true crime podcast like this one. But I have also had the belief that there is always more to a story, more hiding in the background. So I set it aside for a rainy day, saved it somewhere in my hard drive, and for the most part, the little news clipping was out of sight and out of mind. Occasionally, I'd come across the little news blurb again on my computer. Each time, I'd open it up, skim the words quickly, and consider if I should drag it to the trash folder. Sometimes I caught myself studying it like one might a cave drawing or hieroglyphics, holding it up to the light. Was this just garbage, or was it a relic? And I found myself repeating the same questions in my head. Why would a 17-year-old kid, clean-cut and ordinary-looking, walk into a gas station so close to home and risk his whole future by killing someone for a little cash? And about that murdered gas station attendant, he too was a teenager, just 18 years old, a young man named Ray Dahms. I did the math quickly. Ray Dahms' killer would be getting close to 80 years of age today. I was curious. What becomes of a 17-year-old killer? Where does his life go? Who was he, and who was the young man he killed, and why did this happen? One news clipping turned to 3, then 5, then 50. I slowly began to understand this story's cryptic language and see what it was trying to tell me. At first, there were some minor discoveries and surprises. For example, as it turns out, there actually was a type of car chase, sort of, and 2 stolen cars, although those little nuggets are far from central to the story. What is central is this. I had assumed that his 40-year sentence in 1965 was the end of this young man's crimes, or at least the end of his opportunities to harm others for a very long time. But I was wrong. I uncovered more chapters of his story, such as the steady stream of young teenage girls. Teenage girls who, not 40 years later, but more like 5 years later, found themselves face to face with this man almost every day. Sometimes they found themselves alone with him, and they were never told. They never knew anything about his very violent past. And all of this in a place where young girls should have been the safest. And I know what you're thinking. How could a man put away in prison for a senseless murder be anywhere near vulnerable young girls? That's the same question everyone has asked me as I've worked on this story. And another question is, why is it that those girls and others who crossed this man's life were never informed about his violent history? Well, as you will witness in this series, it was as if his past had been scrubbed away by him, by those around him, and by the very institutions meant to hold him accountable. And sometimes it seemed by nothing more than blind luck, as if the stars themselves had cleared his path. I've spoken to a lot of people while working on this story. I've talked with friends of Ray Dahms, the young gas station attendant who was killed that night. I've spoken with the perpetrator's family. And I've spoken with a woman who many years ago, at the age of 15, had the courage to speak up. I've learned that some people have spent most of their lives trying to untangle the lies they were told about this man.
But that was just a lie. All of that was just a lie. I mean, how does that help us kids? Well, you don't understand. You wouldn't understand. You're right, I don't. And I still don't.
Other people I've spoken to were shocked when Dakota Spotlight became the first and only entity ever to inform them that the man that they had unfortunately crossed paths with decades ago was a murderer.
That blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. And then I thought to myself, how did they even hire this man?
This is a story about murder, manipulation, and injustice, about a man who killed, then seemed to slip past accountability at every turn. It's also about a young man robbed of his future, and a young girl who spoke her truth when few wanted to hear it. And it's a type of mission, all these years later, to return validation to those left in the wreckage of a killer's lies, and to restore the truth to its rightful place at last. Welcome to Meanwhile in Mankato, Lies, Silence, and Murder in Minnesota.
Honey, he said he's not sleeping. He's been shot.
We were made to think that Brian was the victim.
The question I would have for the state of Minnesota is, how would you allow that?
Point blank with a 12-gauge shotgun. I mean, Christ almighty.
With a rap sheet like this, how could a guy be able to be in a position of authority?
Sometimes he'd come home and it was like, holy smokes, was he drinking at work?
He lied so much he believed his lies.
It still boggles my mind how he got hired.
How the hell does that happen?
Just for heaven's sakes, am I that bad of a person that you can't? I don't even deserve the truth.
A quick note before we begin. In a few places, I've changed names to avoid confusion, especially when people share the same first name. In those cases, I've kept the real name of the person most central to the story and adjusted the name of the one with a smaller role. I've also chosen to withhold the surnames of a couple people who prefer and I believe deserve more privacy. To begin, we must return to the beginning, to the place this news clipping first carried me, near the small city of Mankato, in south-central Minnesota, where the Minnesota and Blue Earth rivers meet, and where farmland and prairie cradle small towns bound by rural life. The year was 1965, when the pace of life was a little slower, shaped by harvests, high school games, and the steady pull of the river through the valley. And we must commit this name to memory: Ray Dahms. Ray was the 18-year-old kid who got gunned down at a Crossroads gas station. Beyond these fields, the nation and the world was shifting quickly with social change. But in rural Minnesota, sometimes much of that felt far away. 8 miles southwest of Mankato sits the tiny town of Rapidan, the place Ray Dahms called home.
Rapidan was a little farming community. My classmates were either from farm families or lived in Rapidan proper.
This is Steve Madsen. He grew up in Rapidan and was Ray Dahms' friend and classmate, the class of 1965. You're about to hear from two more of Ray Dahms' classmates. They are Roger Funson and Gay Bulow. Gay Bulow was Ray Dahms' high school sweetheart. Here's Gay, followed by Roger.
And Rapidan consisted of 2 streets, and they crossed one another in the center of the town.
It is the intersection of Blue Earth County Road 33 and County Road 9. And the city of Rapidan is a small community.
Today, Rapidan is more than small. It's tiny, with many buildings gone, others empty. But like so many other towns in rural Minnesota, back in 1965, Rapidan was still thriving.
At one point, we had a lumber yard and a bank.
We had a grocery store. We had 2 grocery stores, a post office.
There was a blacksmith shop, a creamery with frozen food lockers to rent, and a farm repair store.
Numerous houses, town pumping station for the water well, and grain elevator is still there.
There was a bar at the end of one of the streets, 2 churches, and a school.
The school was Rapidan's center of gravity. All grades, kindergarten through 12, gathered in a single building. Kids came in every day from the nearby farms and from town. Ray Dahms had played basketball there, and Gay had been a cheerleader.
It was like one of those big square buildings, and the inside had a gym in the very center and a stage at one side of the gym, and the entryway on the other side, and all around the gym there was a balcony that went all the way around the top. And off of that balcony and off of the gym below, there were classrooms. Our classes were very small in Rapidan. Like, there was only 19 in ours, not very many in each class.
And when Ray Dahms and his schoolmates were not in class, not playing sports, or helping out on a farm, the River Valley offered plenty of year-round adventure.
We entertained ourselves. We'd go fishing down at the river and go hunting, picking mushrooms in the spring, flowers in the spring, mulberries when they were due, and black raspberries when they came due.
Ray Dahms was an easygoing kid. He stood out for many reasons. For one, he was a tall young man.
6'2" or 3", brown hair and brown eyes.
He had dark glasses that were very appropriate for his style of face.
I think most people thought him handsome.
A narrow face, full lips, and pretty teeth, which made a nice smile.
Ray was musically inclined, sang with a good voice, and got along with everyone. He was voted homecoming king at school his senior year.
He had a good sense of humor. He liked to be funny.
I remember one time he did a talent show where he memorized something, and I cannot remember what it was, but it was quite a long piece, but he said it all completely backwards. It was something very familiar to us, but he memorized it completely backwards. He had no trouble with classes. He could kind of breeze through classes a lot easier than most. He was very talented. He taught himself to play the guitar.
Ray also excelled in sports. He was the top scorer on the basketball team, and he did well in track and field. Here are Dean and Margot Brudwick, Rapidan High School's basketball coach at the time, and his wife.
He was very much a leader in all the sports, all the activities that Rapidan had. Scholar and a friend of a lot of people.
Super friendly, just one of those wonderful, caring young men, and just cared about all the kids in his class, cared about his coaches, his parents. Just a wonderful, wonderful personality.
Ray Dahms was the oldest of 3 sons. He had 2 younger brothers, Rodney and Randy. He had also had a sister who had passed away at a young age. His parents were Larry and Lorraine Dahms. The family lived just a few miles outside of town. By the summer of 1965, the United States was changing, the world was changing, and so were the lives of Ray and his 18 classmates at Rapidan High. They had finally graduated and were stepping out into the rest of their lives. For some, this would mean the military in Vietnam. For others, it meant work or college or both. For Ray and Gay, it meant building a future together. That summer in July, without fanfare, Ray proposed and Gay said yes. They didn't pick out a wedding date right away, but they did sit down together and sketch out their future. Ray wanted a college degree and Gay wanted to go straight to work, so they pooled their dreams. And it began to take shape when Gay landed a good-paying job at Mankato State College.
The plan was since I had that nice job and everything, that I would put him through college, so he could get a degree after we got married.
In June of '65, Ray landed a temporary job in a remote town. Looking back all these years later, visiting Ray one day that summer is one of Gay's fonder memories.
We just had a nice day that day, just walking around and looking around and spending time together. That particular day was pretty nice.
After his short time there, Ray returned to his parents' home near Rapidan, and he began working at the Rothfork Truckstop, a crossroads gas station and cafe 7 miles from Rapidan. His mother and his brother Rodney worked there too. His father had previously managed the place and still helped out there now and then.
But it was a lot easier to stop by and see him there than it was with his other job, so that was kind of fun.
To Ray and Gay, the summer of '65 felt like a true jumping-off point. Hand in hand, they believe it was just the beginning of their lives together. And they weren't alone in that belief. Their classmates and friends saw it too. To everyone around them, Ray and Gay seemed destined for each other.
That had been a high school romance. That was one of those romances that everybody went like, oh, they're just such a neat couple, that sort of thing. Couples that everybody wished they were. Yeah.
They were made for each other, I think. I had no doubts that they would be getting married. They were in love with each other. They cared for each other.
And all around them, the summer of '65 pulsed with excitement. On July 13th, Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington hosted the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, bringing the nation's biggest stars to Minnesota. And just weeks later, on August 21st, the Beatles touched down to play that same ballpark, sending waves of Beatlemania through the region. For the teenagers in southern Minnesota, it felt like the wider world was brushing right up against their small-town lives. What this young couple didn't know, what nobody in Rapidan could imagine, was that while the world beyond churned with social change, unrest, and violence, their own greatest rupture lay just ahead, just down the road at a lonely gas station in the night. On what was to be the last morning of his short life, Saturday, September 25th. Ray Dahms likely slept in. Working the night shift has a way of catching up to you, and by 6 p.m. that evening he would be due back at work again. He woke up to a quiet house, perhaps an empty one. His brother and his mother were working day shifts at the truck stop that day. Lorraine worked in the cafe, and like Ray, Rodney tended the gas station out front. Here's Steve Madsen again, Ray's friend and classmate.
Kind of a lonesome place out on the highway. One of the first buildings to go up in that area, a gas station in front and a truck stop in the back.
When Ray finally sat up in bed and swung his feet to the floor, the sun was probably high in the sky. Once he dressed and made his way to the kitchen, Notre Dame's football team had likely already taken the field against Purdue. The game would have been just a quick flip of the switch away on Minnesota radio station KRSI.
Purdue on the right will kick off. The wind, of course, is in its face, and the double safety is dropped back close to the end zone, but Eddie, who had been wearing number 2...
Later that day, folks all across Minnesota would tune into a different station, WCCO, because the Minnesota Twins were in Washington trying to clinch the pennant. A bite to eat, maybe coffee, and then Ray was ready to settle into a very lazy afternoon, resting up before another 12-hour shift at the gas station. He may have picked up his clunky guitar and worked on some chords. He'd gotten it from his classmate, Steve.
It was harder than heck to play, and I didn't like it, and I can't remember if I sold it to him. I don't think so. I think I didn't want it anymore. But he could play it pretty well.
Meanwhile, Ray's fiancée, Gabe Eulo, was likely enjoying her Saturday off from her new job. She still lived at home with her parents.
We lived about, I want to say 5 or 6 miles from Rapidan on a farm.
She knew Ray was working again that night, and she planned to go out there and to keep him company. And she had the wheels to get there.
I had a 63 Rambler Ambassador, stick shift, and it could go.
And so, while the Minnesota Twins warmed up for their big matchup in Washington, and while Ray's brother Rodney pumped gas and his mother served coffee and burgers in the cafe, Ray and Gay spent their Saturday afternoons just a few miles apart, looking ahead to the evening when they would reunite at the truck stop on the edge of Mankato, Minnesota. Meanwhile, in the city of Mankato, another person was starting his day, and his trajectory would take him to the gas station outside of town, too. Not once, not twice, but in the end, 3 times that day. If only I were a movie director with a film crew. To shoot this scene, we'd ask the city of Mankato to let us cordon off traffic along the 200 block of Record Street, a quiet residential lane. My production designer would stage the street with 1965 appropriate vehicles parked along the curbs, big fin sedans and boxy station wagons. The first shot would be an extreme close-up. All you see is a shoe, its heel resting on chrome. The chrome is a motorcycle starter pedal, but you can't see that yet. Just the shoe first. An English oxblood, low-cut, with reddish-brown leather slightly scuffed. Then the camera would zoom out slowly. Above the shoe, a sock, a pant leg, the sleeve of a green corduroy jacket. Someone is sitting astride a silent motorcycle, head and face still out of frame. Suddenly, the leg cracks down on the pedal dramatically. But unlike a cool movie like Rebel Without a Cause, This bike does not roar into life. It just spits out a sickly cough. We hear profanities, a man's voice cursing. The leg strikes a third time, and the bike wakes from slumber, rough and hesitant, then gradually settles into an agreeable, steady hum, a somewhat willing accomplice on this fatal day. Cut to close-up of the license plate. It reads MC12762. Finally, from the street, we zoom out to reveal a young man sitting on the idling bike. A small apartment building is his backdrop. The address on the door reads 215 Record Street. His motorcycle is a Honda Model CA77 Dream. It's Neptune blue with a red vinyl seat and chrome trim. And what does he look like, you wonder? The casting call for this film would read, a tall and wiry teenager, Caucasian, with dark hair parted neatly on the left, black-rimmed glasses, ears that stick out just a little bit, the very picture of a clean-cut 60s square. Not a hippie, not a beatnik, and if he's a rebel, you'd never guess it nor imagine what his cause might possibly even be. We pan to the street ahead. Two 10-year-olds wearing Minnesota Twins caps are in the street, chucking a baseball back and forth, punching their leather mitts between casts. Our lanky rider slips the bike into gear, and as my camera operator follows along, he eases away from the curb. As he rolls past the two boys, he gives them a nod like he thinks he's James Dean or something. The kids just glance up quickly, then go right back to their game. It's just some guy. Their heroes swing bats and sit in dugouts, not on motorcycles. And there you have him, driving off. Brian Lee Hendrickson, cruising down Record Street, Mankato, Minnesota, midday, September 25th, 1965. "17-year-old Brian Lee Hendrickson cruises south out of Mankato on Blue Earth County Road 1. He's on his way to pick up his new friend, Bud Crawford, in the neighboring town of Rapidan. I'll be calling his friend Bud Crawford to avoid confusion, since his name is also Ray. Exactly how Bud Crawford of Rapidan first crossed paths with Brian Lee Hendrickson isn't clear. Bud was a senior at Rapidan and Brian at Mankato High. The likely link was the Rothfork Gas Station and Cafe, where Brian had recently picked up a few shifts pumping gas. The truck stop was a magnet for teens, open late with a pinball machine buzzing in the corner and a steady stream of kids drifting in and out. Maybe that's where Bud and Brian first connected. However it played out exactly, though, Brian and Bud are now friends, and on this day they are going to take a ride on Brian's motorcycle and, in fact, stop out at the crossroads. Brian Hendrickson pulls his Honda up to the Crawford home in Rapidan, and Bud bounces out and climbs on behind him. Together, they ride out towards the truck stop on open country roads. 15 minutes later, they're pulling into the wide parking lot framed by cornfields, the stalks now over 6 feet tall. You should not imagine the big truck stops of today. This was 1965, no showers or stores or auto garages, just a couple gas station pumps and a small cafe and plenty of space outside for trucks to park. Here is Steve Madsen again, remembering the truck stop, which no longer stands.
The gas station part out front was rather sparse and just rather open with a glass front.
The two young men head in towards the gas station entrance. For Brian, this is just the first of 3 visits he'll make here this day. I can't tell you exactly what Ray Dahms' mother and brother were doing when Brian and Bud walked into the station. I do know this, though. Rodney Dahms was likely on his toes. Working as a station attendant back then was a whole different deal than today. When you pulled into a full-service gas station in 1965 and outskipped an attendant like Ray or Rodney Dahms, you were treated like royalty. Paula Volbrecht, now named Paula Purvis of Rapidan, was 13 years old when Ray Dahms was killed. She remembers him well. Just a 7th grader at the time, she looked up to the older kids at school. She remembers, too, the truck stop and the full-service treatment of that era. And as many of us recall, it all started when your tires rolled over the ding-ding bell laying out front.
Looks like a thick electrical cord almost, and you drive over that and it'll go ding ding, you know.
In every neighborhood today, there is a service station. Here you can buy gasoline and oil for your car, and you receive many other services as well.
You would pull up to the pump, and then they would come out because they knew somebody drove up.
Men who run service stations are called dealers or managers, and a man who works for them is called an attendant. The attendant finds out what kind and how much gasoline you want.
There, and you'd say, give me $5 worth. And they would put $5 worth in.
The service station attendant washes your windshield so that it's bright and clear.
And then they, went around the edge and made sure there was no streaks in there. And
all cars need oil. The attendant also checks under the hood of your car.
You'd pop the hood and they'd check your oil and say, yeah, you need oil, or you're just fine. And
he looks to see if there is enough water in your radiator. If more is needed, he pulls out a special water hose to fill the radiator.
And then if you had a tire that was low, they'd say, should I put a little air in that tire?
He uses the air hose to do this. Air goes into the tire when the button is pressed. Then you pay him for the gasoline and oil. His other services are free. Some service stations keep the money drawer in the station house. And it's here where the attendant goes to get your change. Today, there are many service stations serving people during the day, and some of them staying open around the clock to serve people who travel at night. Certainly there is one in your neighborhood, too.
And all of that without even getting out of your car. Of course, at a place like the Rothfork, you could also walk inside to get something to eat or use the restroom.
If you came in for gas, you would have to go through the station part to get to the cafeteria or whatever cafe part.
Beautiful, Jim, beautiful. $265 in the Dialing for Dollars jackpot. I'll be making one of those calls, and I may be calling you.
And back there in the cafe, you could find a seat, and someone like Ray's mom, Lorraine Dahms, would serve you coffee and scribble your order on a little notepad.
It seemed to me there was a counter and with stools on it, and then there were a few booths.
While waiting on your food, you might browse through the Mankato Free Press newspaper, or on a day like this one, September 25th, 1965, you might join the other patrons listening in on the Twins game as they inched closer to winning the pennant.
Third inning, no score. Bouncer hits slowly down to Quillisi. He looks at second, has to go to first. The lights have been on since the start of the game. Angry sky.
What I can tell you for certain about those hours at Rothfork is this. Bud Crawford needed to run back to Rapidan for an hour or so to help his father, who was a custodian at the school. So he borrowed Brian's motorcycle and rode back to Rapidan. Brian Lee Hendrickson decided to wait for Bud at the truck stop. And while waiting, he helped Ray's brother Rodney with tending the pumps. It's unclear if Brian did this on the clock or if he was just bored and wanting to help out. But there he was, helping Rodney Dahms, pumping gas, checking oil, just 12 hours before he would return and murder Ray Dahms. When Bud Crawford returned on the motorcycle, it was early afternoon. Bud and Brian left the crossroads then and rode to Brian's place at 215 Record Street, Mankato. Later that evening, at about the time Ray Dahms was getting ready to head back to work for another 12-hour shift, Brian and Bud were headed to downtown Mankato for pizza and a movie. They were going to see the movie Help with the Beatles. After a lazy afternoon at home, Ray Dahms needs to get to work at the Rothfork Gas Station. He gets dressed, grabs the clunky guitar, then fires up his purple and white 1957 four-door Plymouth. At the truck stop, he pulls on his uniform and relieves his brother Rodney from his shift. On weekdays, the cafe in the back stays open all night, but on Saturdays like this and Sundays, it closes early. Tonight, Ray's dad, Larry, comes by to help Mrs. Dahms clean up the place. Through the evening, customers come and go while teenagers drift in and hang out. Some linger at the pinball machine, and the place is never without music, spilling from the jukebox, humming from the radio, or drifting from Ray's guitar between customers. Around 9 p.m., Ray's fiancée, Gay Bulow, pulls into the lot in her 63 Rambler. As the hours slip by, the crowd thins. Mr. and Mrs. Dahms head home, and one by one, or in pairs, the teens rumble off in clunkers and hot rods. By late night, it's mostly just Ray and Gay, with the occasional customer pulling in for gas.
Well, all I remember is we were just hanging out, and then he'd get busy and go take care of whatever he had to do, and then come back and we'd yak some more and, back and forth like that, and spent the night like that.
Meanwhile, in Mankato, Brian and Bud are watching the Beatles in the movie Help at the Grand Theater.
I'll see what you've done with your filthy Eastern ways.
After the movie, they go to Marty's Pizza on Front Street, a popular college hangout. But by midnight, Bud Crawford needs to get back to Rapidan. The two boys get back on the Honda, and Brian gives him a ride home. But as Brian pulls away from the Crawford residence in Rapidan, he doesn't head home to Mankato. Instead, he points the bike towards the Crossroads truck stop. It's time for his second visit of the day. As he swings into the gas station around 1 a.m., perhaps he's taken back or a little disappointed when he sees a second car sitting next to Ray's Plymouth, a Rambler.
Now then, that was Petula Clark and Who Am I? Great song.
Inside, Brian finds Ray Dahms and the owner of that Rambler, a girl he's never seen before. It's Gay Bulow, Ray's fiancée. And at some point, Brian Hendrickson likely slips into the back of the building, perhaps unnoticed, perhaps under the guise of using a restroom. Quickly, he walks through the restaurant, and then he unlocks a back door. Only minutes later, perhaps while feigning a yawn, he tells Gay and Ray he needs to be getting home.
This is Ray Anthony now. Everybody loves somebody. 3 minutes.
He slips into the quiet home he shares with his father and one brother. He quietly retrieves a shotgun, drops 4 shells into his pocket, and slips back outside again. Let's bring back the movie crew now, extreme close-up of a shoe again. English oxblood, low cut, the reddish-brown leather, worn and scuffed. His foot slams the kick pedal. The Honda roars to life on the first try. The bike pulls away from the curb. Another cut, head-on shot with Brian Lee Hendrickson barreling down Highway 169. The shotgun rides awkwardly at his side, the cold air tearing through his short, dark hair, his corduroy jacket snapping loose in the wind. Cut to the Crossroads station where it's time for Gay Bulow to head home.
And he says, you probably ought to head home, I suppose, and because it was church the next day.
The camera pans backwards, allowing Gay and Ray to step outside into the cool autumn air. We follow the couple until they stop and stand together next to Gay's Rambler. It's a simple parting, perhaps, the kind of everyday goodbye they're expecting to share over a lifetime. And they share words, too. Words between two young kids on the precipice of an eternity together. But those parting words are not ours to hear, nor ours to remember or impose on. They belong only to Gay and to Ray, and to what somehow feels like a most excruciatingly precious, finite sliver of time. So we pull back the camera higher and out of earshot, a drone's eye view of the crossroads, the station glowing yellow and gold below, the cornstalks moving with the breeze. The young couple lean in together, a kiss perhaps, and then Ray opens her car door for her. Gay starts the engine, shifts into gear, and pulls through the lot slowly, her headlights sweeping over the cornfield. She gives them a little wave, and then she and her little Rambler are up on the highway, heading home. Close up on Ray Dahms. He's lingering for a moment, watching her taillights shrinking in the distance. We see them reflecting in his glasses. This man, this young man, he stuffs his hands in his pockets, then heads back towards the station entrance. Before he walks inside, he looks up just once and takes in the endless Minnesota sky above him, the wide, breathtaking Milky Way, and the mysterious heavens beyond. Still yet to come in Meanwhile in Mankato, Lies, Silence, and Murder in Minnesota.
He's not sleeping. He's been shot.
Point blank with a 12-gauge shotgun. I mean, Christ almighty.
We were made to think that Brian was the victim.
With a rap sheet like this, how could a guy be able to be in a position of authority?
You couldn't believe a word out of his mouth because he lied about everything.
The question I would have for the state of Minnesota is how would you allow that?
How the hell does that happen?
He really tricks people into thinking that he's a terrific guy, and he's not.
He lied so much he believed his lies.
But there's something I have to tell you. He hasn't been in college. He was in prison.
I said he could have been a serial killer, and nobody would have known it.
Thank you so much for joining me. Meanwhile in Mankato, Lies, Silence, and Murder in Minnesota was written, researched, edited, and produced by me, James Wolner. Additional research assistance by Mari Zorb Hansen. If you'd like to learn more, visit dakotaspotlight.com, where you can explore 12 seasons of the show. If you have more information about this story, please send me an email at dakotaspotlight@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining me and for listening to Dakota Spotlight.